So a while ago, Star Wars Battlefront was announced for next-gen systems and the PC with lots of hype and fanfare. I mean, after all, Star Wars Battlefront 3 had become somewhat of a mythical game in the gaming community, with many people begging it to be made, despite the fact that the developer who was making it originally had lots of issues, including a Borderlands 2 situation where they were funneling the money from Star Wars Battlefront and putting it toward their own project instead. But anyways, let's review the beta of this game and talk about it. So the first thing you notice when you boot the game up is a Metro-styled user interface, you know, similar to that of the Xbox One dashboard. It has this on the PC too, but there's also fewer features you can configure compared to Battlefield 4 on both the PC and console, as I played this game on both console and the PC before I started this review and made this video. Now, of course, the clunky user interface of this game is the least of this game's worries, because the game feels like it's heavily watered down from Battlefield 4. Now, one of the main problems of this game, for example, is the fact that the server list is gone. Like, there's still dedicated servers, but the server list in this game is nowhere to be seen because it does not have a server list in-game or through Battlelog. Instead, it has matchmaking. And the matchmaking in this game is pretty trashy because it just does not work whatsoever. Like on the Xbox One version, I was thrown into lobby after lobby of games that would kick me back to the menu. Games that would, they'd never start, and games where the lobby would just be empty. And this was happening for about, 20-30 minutes before I finally got into a game. And while this is still a beta, that's not a very good sign for the final game whatsoever. But what's even worse is that many Battlefield 4 veterans will likely remember when Battlefield 4 was a newer Xbox One game, and when you try to join a server, you'd get some stupid message about how there were players waiting in line of you, and sometimes this would happen on servers with only a handful of people, or it would even happen sometimes with nobody in the server. It would tell you that you had to wait your turn to get into a server, and yet there's nobody in the entire server. Now, of course, this did not happen on the PC version when I played it, but I had some other issues with frame rate that seemed to happen the first or second time I played the game. I mean, the next time I played the game, I didn't really notice frame rate issues as severe. I mean, sure, I had some frame rate drops a little, but maybe I could have boosted my frame rate if I had updated my AMD drivers. Now, this game does not seem to support Mantle from what I hear. It will support DirectX 12 when the game comes out, but who with the brain would upgrade to Windows 10 because it's a piece of shit operating system? The frame rate is pretty similar to Battlefield 4, however, on the Xbox One at least, but it's slightly better, but there are still drops here and there despite running at 60 frames a second. That is when you get into a lobby. But now let's finally talk about the gameplay of Star Wars Battlefront itself. Now, I kind of have reserved judgment on this game because not a lot about this game was confirmed. I mean, all you had were slick pre-produced gameplay videos, and we all know how much those can differ from the actual game. And of course, the other thing with this game is that many internet gamers were already disliking this game. For example, the well-known comparison chart picture between Battlefront 2 and this game that was posted on not just 4chan and many image boards and message boards, but also a squatted domain that somebody bought as a joke and posted to 4chan. Now, I usually don't take internet gamers 100% seriously because, well, a lot of their opinions can be quite cringeworthy. Just look at how Undertale has a higher Metacritic score than Metal Gear Solid 5, The Witcher 3, or Grand Theft Auto 5. But at the same time, many people have been burnt by games which both lack content and have mediocre gameplay, or in other cases, such as this game, they just are even downgrades from previous installments in the series. And the gameplay in this game is pretty terrible. Now, instead of having classes with preset loadouts with you being able to unlock certain other classes if you get more kills, this game instead uses an unlock system similar to Call of Duty, similar to Battlefield, like many of those other games. But you also, in this game, do not get to pilot vehicles like you can in Battlefield or Star Wars Battlefront, as vehicles are now pick-up power-ups. I mean, if you're playing this game for the first time, and you've played Star Wars Battlefront 2, or you've played Battlefield 4, you might think, oh boy, I can walk up to a vehicle and get right in it and get kills like I'm playing Battlefield 4 or Star Wars Battlefront, because that's what you can do in those games. And then you have this game where vehicles are reduced to mere power-ups, and you can no longer just get into a vehicle and drive it around like you could in Star Wars Battlefront 2, like you could in Battlefield 4. The maps are pretty bled too. At least in the modes I'm playing, the maps seem to just be a bunch of flat area you run around, and sure, there are trenches, but they're so narrow that you can't really hide in them like you can in Battlefield 4's trenches. I mean, remember that one, it was this one naval map or whatever, and it had these deep trenches in the concrete that you could hide in, and these trenches are not that deep, and you can easily be seen in them anyways. Gunplay is a joke in this game, because not only do you have the flat maps, but you also have problems with, like, you know the blaster? It seems like the blaster seems pretty sluggish, especially when I shoot it now. I don't know if they're trying to do this for intentional effect or what. And it's made worse with the fact that the game has some intense auto-aim. Now, I don't know if you can disable it. I didn't really bother to check too much in the settings to remember that. But what I do know is that this game lacks ping counters, even on the PC version. And Battlefield 4 on the PC did have ping counters, even though the Xbox version lacked ping counters. And of course, the whole grenade loadout system's stupid, because unlike Battlefield 4, where you start out with a preset class where you have at least the basics, this game, on the other hand, doesn't even give you grenades. You have to, like, unlock them after leveling up, or use your partner's hand loadout, which you can easily do if you figure out how, because it's not in a menu that many people would think to look at. And speaking of which, the spawn points in this game are a joke. Unlike Battlefield, where you can choose a spawn point, this game you either start or partner start. I mean, it's so watered down from Battlefield 4. I mean, here's the thing. If they actually made Battlefield 4 with a Star Wars skin, sure, that would garner some complaints, but it would still be a lot better than what this piece of trash game is. Oh yeah, and your health regenerates too. Unlike the other Star Wars game where you could, where you have to pick up your own health, this game has regenerating health, and it regenerates like it does in Call of Duty, maybe even faster. Unlike Battlefield 4, which takes some time for health to regenerate, like you have to actually duck and hide for a while just to get your health to regenerate. Oh yeah, and the vehicles in this game control like absolute crap. I mean, I got into the AT-AT and it was barely controllable. It felt like some Call of Duty kill streak with the controls, like control-wise, and the AT-ATs were on rails too, from what I could tell. So let's talk about what this game did right, since you don't really need to talk about it much. The on-foot controls are pretty much the same as Battlefield 4's on the console and PC. In fact, even the sensitivity option is the same. Now, of course, you don't get as much customizability in this game as you do in Battlefield 4, which lets you tweak a lot of options, even on console. But what you do get in this game are basic controls that at least somewhat work on foot. The game also features the same Frostbite Engine 3 graphics you've come to expect from DICE, as, well, they look a lot like Battlefield 4's, but with Star Wars elements to it. And of course, the blasters look a lot like they would in a movie, as they try to get that feel down for it. And if you've played Battlefield 4 before, you've likely seen graphics that are on this level or very close to it, because this game has pretty good graphics from DICE, and Battlefield 4 has pretty good graphics from DICE. However, at the same time with this game, the game also seems to suffer from not so great system requirements, as the game requires, at the very minimum, something extremely high. The minimum requirements are an i3 6300T or equivalent, which is a modern Skylake CPU, 8 gigs of RAM, a GeForce GTX 660 2GB or a Radeon HD 7850 2GB, and the recommended requirements are a i5 6600 or equivalent, also a Skylake CPU, 16 gigs of RAM, a GTX 970 4GB or R9 290 4GB. These are the recommended requirements, 16 gigs of RAM. Now, Battlefield 4, on the other hand, could run on a lot weaker hardware. It could run on even an 8800 GT or old GTX 260. I mean, I used to play Battlefield 4 on a GTX 260. It ran playable enough on that GPU. And yet this game, on the other hand, I'm hearing about people getting the same frame rates as I did on my GTX 260 on medium on Battlefield 4, on medium on this game with a much newer ATI GPU. I think an R7 270, 260, I forget. But that's what I saw the PC Gamer guy getting on his article on it. So the thing is, this game does not scale as well as Battlefield 4 does, which is a big thing considering how the gameplay of this game seems to be a lot more casual oriented than Battlefield 4 does. I mean, look at this tiny flat map. I mean, just look at this shit. This is obviously casualized. I mean, even Star Wars Battlefront 2 had better map design than this game did. And that was, what, a PlayStation 2 and original Xbox game? And that says a lot. So what are my thoughts on this game, finally? Well, my thoughts on this are very simple. Don't buy this game. Don't pre-order this game. Here's the thing. If you buy this game or even pre-order it, you're sending a message to companies like EA that, hey, people will buy our casual Star Wars game, let's make more like this. And that's the thing with many developers, and the thing is, many gamers have forgotten that voting with your wallet actually convinces developers not to make trashy games. I mean, if you're a developer and you make a game and it sells poorly, maybe you need to look at why it sold poorly, especially if your game was getting horrible user reviews and maybe horrible Metacritic reviews as well. Even if this game avoided the comparisons to the older Star Wars Battlefront game by simply slapping on a different name to it, the game would be seen for what it is even more maybe, and people would look at it as a mediocre Star Wars game that has flashy Battlefield 4 graphics, but that's about it really. So all in all, don't buy this game. Don't pre-order it. Save your money. There's other games coming out. Like, for example, Wasteland 2. That's getting an Xbox One and PS4 port. Same with Divinity and Original Sin. And, of course, Fallout 4 is coming to the Xbox One and PS4. I mean, I don't know how good that game's going to be because Bethesda's known for releasing buggy games. But you could pre-order other games for your Xbox One and PS4 that aren't Star Wars Battlefront. Don't buy this game. Simply don't. I mean, the beta's up right now for the next few days if you want to see what I'm talking about. So, yeah. It's on PC, Xbox One, and PS4, and it's free on the PC and the other systems too. But, yeah. Don't buy this game. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.